And welcome to Nurses and Hypochondriacs, Cynthia Sue Larson.
Hello. Such a nice treat to be talking with you today, Ursilia.
Oh, I'm
Love what you're
so
doing
excited.
too.
Oh,
Yeah.
thank you. Thank you. I know I'm so excited. I'm so excited that I found you. It's been an interesting journey for me, like I was telling you a little bit about. But yeah, I want to know how you started all this because the way I found you was I started looking into timeline jumping and quantum timeline jumping and really studying consciousness
Yes.
intently, very,
Love it.
very seriously, because a man came into my world that I was dating and he was doing this stuff. He kind of, it happened when one night he sent me a painting that he had done of this voluptuous woman. And I was just like, and it was at 7 o'clock that he sent me the painting. And I was like, why are you sending me this painting? I haven't talked to you in 3 days. What's going on with you? I swear he's a time traveler or something, right?
Right.
So he's like, don't call my painting fat, because I called his painting fat. And so we had this exchange. It was very funny. I was writing him a letter at the time. I was like, you know what? I'm just going to write you this letter. Just wait for it. And then we'll talk about it later. At 11 o'clock that night, I go into my bedroom and I take off all my clothes because I'm getting ready for bed. And I stand in front of my mirror. And I'm like, I just stood back. The painting was me. Those were my curves.
Wow.
And so in the morning, I called him and I was like, hey, I know who the woman in the painting is. And he's like, well, who is it? I go, it's me.
Yeah.
And I was furious, and I went to his house and I actually saw it, and he was like shifting it, like he was changing it into different modes. It kept it had many different colors and stuff, so he had different formations of it, which was really weird. And so I was like, that's me. I know my curves. Like, he took my curves, but it was like me looking into the mirror. It's like as if he was in my head looking at me. Do you see what I'm saying? It's not his
Right.
version of me, which
Right.
was really interesting, a little bit creepy. So I asked him what he was doing. And he's like, oh, I was astral traveling and I just saw this vision of this woman and I had to capture her curves.
It's interesting that that was time travel too, because he clearly painted it before you even had that moment of looking and noticing your curves. So
Exactly. Isn't that
oh,
fascinating though?
so super cool. Love it.
It's like, he's a time traveler. I was like, what? And I kept telling him that. I go, do you understand? You sent it to me at 7 and I took the pose at 11,
Right.
So does that mean that there's no time and space? I mean,
It means that we can see through it. It's like astral traveling and remote viewing, these kinds of things. We're aware that we can observe through our true identity, which is consciousness. And this gets to the heart and soul of quantum jumping, of reality shifting.
right.
It's the key to the whole thing. You've got to recognize that we are not our bodies. We are in the body, but we are consciousness itself. And that means we're capable of actually traveling like your friend was doing
Oh
before.
my gosh.
Super cool. Super, super cool.
Oh my gosh, it's pretty wild. So tell us a little bit about yourself, Cynthia. Like, how did you get into writing about all this amazing, cool stuff? Like I said, you were probably a time traveler too. I think you were way ahead in the future when you were writing all this stuff, because when I was putting together this episode, I read your first book a couple months ago, the Quantum Jumps book. And then I was looking at your website and I'm like, wait a minute, how about the consciousness book? You know? And I was just like, wait a minute, let me read this. And I canceled all my plans yesterday. I was like, I have to sit there and read it. And it answered so many of these questions that I've had, because I've been doing all of this research, and this phenomena has been happening to me. And I was like, this book puts it all together.
Right.
Well,
you're right about that. I guess you could call me a time traveler in the sense that my most recent remembered past life is about 500 years in our possible future. So it's a possible future, and
right.
it is very clear for me. So it totally drives everything that I'm working on, because I feel like this is a pivotal time in human history. To me, it was obviously clear 20 years ago, but now I think everybody can see it. So I was definitely writing about this in my book, Reality Shifts, that I think you're referring to, when
Yes,
consciousness
it's the
changes the
reality
physical
shifts.
world. Yeah.
Yes.
That book was a little bit ahead of its time, because when I showed
Yes.
it to my agent at the time, my agent didn't know what to do with it and felt like this won't even sell. Then of course, What the Bleep Do We Know came out. So it's fine. Obviously we're in a growing awareness, awakening time where humanity is recognizing that, what if we are consciousness? What if things like the placebo effect have a science behind them? What if all of this is the true nature of the way reality works, and the quantum paradigm is the key to everything? And that's where my books like to go. And so my background then is basically based on my awareness of being consciousness, and remembering not just that past life in the future, but also hanging out in between lives. And so that kind of that quality of who I feel myself to be is an intrinsic part of everything I do. And clearly that shapes it. And I think now that we're going through hopefully the end of this pandemic, people are coming out of hopefully a reflective time, with each person really starting to recognize the power of this level of awareness, this observational skill that we each possess.
They are, and they are. They're waking up. This is what I'm seeing in healthcare. So a lot of people are waking up, but they're upset. And I was like, oh, I was there 10 years ago. In 2012,
Yeah.
I woke up and I was mad,
Yeah.
and thank God I had already started my creative projects, because I was like, okay, I have to
channel that
energy, and kind of put these two things that I'm doing together, to where I'm not just focused on here. Like I was working with a group of doctors on Sunday, and they were just very upset. And they're like, oh, the management here. I go, that's everywhere. I go, you have to focus on what is your goal.
Right.
What is your goal? Do you want to get up and change things here? Or are you just here to make money and then create something else on the outside? Right. And they're like, oh, and I go, you have to see it that way. You can't keep fighting these people, because they're not going to change.
Yeah, it's a wasted effort and time. And yeah, exactly.
Right. And I did a lot of hypnotherapy, and my hypnotherapist years ago, when I was in my awakening, said to me, she's like, there's corruption everywhere, pick your poison. Well,
that being said, is possible too, to do like you're doing and tell stories that are capable of bringing that rogue element. I love the way you use that word.
Yeah. Because thank you.
It totally invites people to take that observational level, that step up, so that they can view things from a level that's above the current drama. And that's why philosophers and storytellers are my heroes. So you're my hero.
Thank you. You're my hero.
Because you're basically inviting us to take a look at everything as if it's like a play on the stage. And so then we relax, our autonomic nervous system resets. We can finally absorb some new information that otherwise we're constantly shutting the world out, because we're in that, we're a little bit revved up, a little bit in the drama. And so then we're like, nope, can't take it, not taking it. But in the story, we're open.
Right. You take yourself out of the story, and you're like the audience.
Yes.
And that's what I've been teaching people, especially after reading your Quantum Jumps book,
Yes.
Even in bullying,
Yes.
because what I've noticed, this is really interesting, is people will bring you into their reality. They'll like push you.
They'll try.
Yeah,
I'm the victim. That means you're the perpetrator. It's like, wait a minute.
You're like, I don't want to play this role. I don't like this. No.
Yeah, we're playing good guys and bad guys. I'm the good guy. You're the bad guy. Like
no. When we were kids. Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
I started to really notice it after I read your book, because, and I'll give another example. I was at a nail salon with my friend Gary, who's had several near-death experiences. And he is a very fascinating person. He kind of glows, he resonates. And we were at this nail salon. It was October, and I was looking for a burnt pumpkin nail polish, and that's what came into my head. And I was looking for it. I found a fluorescent orange, and I was looking for it, and I kept saying it out loud. I'm looking for a burnt orange or a burnt pumpkin. And my friend Gary was sitting with his back to the nail polishes, and there was a box there. And all of a sudden, he reaches in back of the box and he pulls out a nail polish and he gives it to me and he goes, "Is this what you're looking for?" It said burnt pumpkin.
Oh, wow.
So
Love
that's
that.
that's how I knew I was. And then everything kind of kept going bad at this nail salon. I didn't even want to be there because we had to wait. I was like, "There's a nail salon in every corner. Let's go somewhere else." No, but he insisted we stay there, and so that's how I started to really watch that. And I was like, "This is interesting. Is this my reality or is this theirs?" So it's always like, know thyself, right?
Absolutely, because we're experiencing subjective realities. We are social animals, so sometimes we things converge, but not always. And I think that's really an important aspect of quantum paradigm thinking, to start opening yourself up to, because it's not what we're learning. It's not what we're taught, is just the opposite. We're taught there's only one truth, there's only one history. We now, if you study like Carlo Rovelli's book about time, he's a physicist and he talks about time, then you become instantly clear on the fact that my time, my now is not your now. And so that means everything is a little bit off, like everything is different. And so why are we assuming that there's this one objective reality? And then if you just jump to the other side of it, which is where I am with this whole quantum jumping, timeline jumping, reality shifting, Mandela
Yeah,
effect.
I love it.
Yeah, then you're in this place where suddenly you recognize, what if it's true that I have my own subjective reality, you have yours? Sometimes they come together, but sometimes they don't. And that means we're going to have different memories, not just in the present moment, but like we can be timeline jumping to such a degree that you might hear someone tell you, like, "Don't you remember that time when we were kids and blah, blah, blah happened?" And then you feel like, what are you talking about? Because that is not what you remember at all.
That's interesting because the guy that I was dating, I think because he jumps so fast and so
Yep.
quickly, how his brain works, he would tell me a story and then I would repeat him the story and he'd be like, "That's not what it is."
Right.
And it was different. And then he would tell it a different way.
Exactly.
And it was pretty wild. And we should study him. Like I just was always so, the reason why I kept dating him was I was so fascinated by him. I'm always a scientist. I've been a scientist ever since I was in third grade. I loved science and doing science projects and stuff. So I'm just like, this is really, really, he was so fascinating to me. Like, I got to figure this out. Like, what is he doing and what is going on here?
Yeah.
And he's a very brilliant man and very well to do for himself, and I was just like, what's the secret? And I kept asking him and he'd be like, "I don't know what you're talking about."
Well, to him it's normal, and he doesn't
To him
see
it's normal. It's true.
he doesn't
He's
see how
like,
fast he's zipping through these realities. I think a
right,
lot of our top people are doing this, and they may not even be aware that it's happening. You're right.
right. It's just pretty wild. So this can kind of go into my next question on how we can use quantum jumping in our own lives. I mean, can you kind of give us some examples on how this can help us, especially in healthcare? Because what I'm seeing now is a lot of my patients are just not being accountable for their own healthcare, and it's a scary time not to do that. I mean, we're done with the doctor that used to know you and come to your house and visit you and be in the community, and the doctor saw everybody, so he knew what was going on with everybody. That hasn't been around for 100 years or so. And now you'll go see probably a different provider each time you go into the healthcare field. So you really have to be accountable for yourself and what's going on with you. But it's amazing how in the adult world, people are on hundreds of medications, don't know what they're taking, don't know why, don't understand anything about their health or the food that they're eating. And they're very, very unconscious. This is what I see because I watch people and I was like, wow, they're in a loop. They're unconscious. They don't even know what they're doing. I mean, my mother was having some eating problems where she just kept eating and eating and eating, and she was in a loop.
Sometimes the gut microbiome, there can be what do you call that? A biomic situation. So
it was with her because she
oh
did
my
have
gosh, yeah.
it did. She did
And
have a
so it's
lot of
not,
stuff going on with her microbiome,
so I
which I
wouldn't want to
corrected.
blame her.
Yeah.
I'd be like, okay, so it's almost like the stomach wants to feed itself because it's got this
Yes.
whole
Yes.
situation going, and it's not. I
Yeah.
wouldn't blame her. A
It's
lot of
also an
people,
anxiety thing, because
yeah,
I totally broke it down for her, because her doctors weren't helping her,
right.
and so she has to be very conscious, very aware, very, in the moment. And she's so far ahead of herself, 'cause she's again a creative and she's super hyper. And so, and I think that maybe that's the problem. These people are so far in the future that they're not in the present, maybe.
Right. Well, quantum jumping is quite helpful for receiving quote unquote bad news, like a cancer diagnosis. I know several people who have taken a workshop with me or worked with me, and they've been able to literally jump out of cancer, like in the elevator going
Love
up
it.
to a doctor's office appointment, just like jumping, like, okay, this is going to be gone. I'm going to jump into that reality. Now, that the person I'm mentioning who did this, he was a master meditator. He'd been doing that for years. So he was just literally visualizing there's another reality where I do not have this cancer. It's gone. And so by the time he jumped, jump, he was alone in the elevator. What might have looked funny, but he got to the appointment and, it was clear. This does happen for a lot of people. So that's one application of reality shifting, quantum jumping, timeline jumping is, of course, to jump out of even things like a broken bone, even a burn. I've witnessed these for myself. And this goes to the limit of what we think placebo effect is, because usually when you hear placebo effect, you're not thinking, but that can't cover a broken bone. Yes, it can. When that placebo is basically quantum timeline jumping, and you're going from a place where you had a broken bone, like my friend Susan did, and I share her story in my book Quantum Jumps. And then when she went in for her appointment, there was nothing broken, and she's starting a new job, and it's really hard to explain, why did you take time off from your new job to get these scans and x-rays done when you don't even have a broken leg? She's like, but I did.
I love that.
Yeah.
I love that. And that is so cool. And again, after I've read a lot of your stuff in your books, I started teaching it to my patients. Like I had a patient Sunday or Saturday where she just was super stressed out. She was very young. She was only 20. She was having a lot of anxiety, depression due to her job. So everything else was okay. Her living situation was great, family situation, boyfriend situation. She was going to school at a university. She was doing great, except for this job, which was super stressful. She was making okay, but she had a management position, but she was real stuck about letting it go, where everybody was telling her just to let it go. So I sat there and I go, we're going to quantum jump out of this, and I worked with her, and I had time, which was so cool. And I was like, we're going to do it. And it was her pride just holding on to this, like by her fingertips, which was interesting. So then I told her, I go, okay, I'm going to give you a week of stress leave. And all of a sudden she jumped. She's like, that's right. She goes, wait a minute. She goes, I get a week of sick leave and I get a week of vacation time. Boom. There's your 2 weeks. Boom. Yep. We immediately we found it, and she left out of there like she had just won the lotto.
I love it.
Right. And
that's awesome.
Yeah. And she did have the belief system that she could get a new job that was better. But I think it was because I asked her, I go, what is keeping you here? Is it your pride? Right. She's like, yes. I go, you don't have to prove this to anyone. I go, this is you that is keeping you there. You're your worst enemy.
That's the key to looking at all this reality shifting and quantum jumping, is just to know that it's just you and sort of a reflection of you, that you're just playing with the universe like it's your best friend. And it's hard to picture that because we tend to get caught up in drama. And this is the key to just not going there. I love the way you worked with her. That is so beautiful.
Yeah. I mean, I think your stuff would be so great in the teen realm,
Yes,
because there's so much going on. There's so much disempowerment that I see, even especially with bullying. And I don't think bullying is being coached correctly, personally. Right. But if you coach it in a consciousness way, right? Because then I had another patient who was 12 who had gotten bullied by her best friend because she didn't do something her best friend had told her to, and so then the best friend was picking on her, and this my patient was actually the sidekick, where this girl was the kind of, the more important person, I guess,
Yeah.
or more of like a narcissist in a way. And so she ends up the narcissist kid ends up hitting my patient in the head with her phone, which was terrible, and there was all these other problems. And so then I really sat with her, and again, she told me her story, she told me what happened, and it ended up, I go, well, there's always something else going on with the bully, and this poor girl, the bully, her father had just passed away. I mean, she had a lot of stuff going on. And I go, well, see, do you understand? She's trying to control something. So
Yeah.
she sees you. So she's trying to control you. I go,
Right.
but all you have to say is, like, when she accused you of something, you just say, no, I didn't do that. And you have to stand in your power,
The way
you know.
I like to invite people to ask that question, how good can it get? Because
I love that. Yes.
it immediately elevates front, because otherwise we get caught in our act, do, and then we're sort of in autopilot mode where we're playing,
Yes.
getting involved in these loops, the behavioral loops that we don't want to get stuck in. But if you ask how good can it get, it brings you above the drama, and then you get to a place of looking down and seeing it. And I also want to just give a shout out to Lynn Forrest's book, Beyond Victim Consciousness. She does, yeah, she totally addresses this whole drama triangle is what it's called,
I love
where
it.
we come into life and we're victims. We feel grief and sadness because we're crying and we don't get every need dealt with immediately, usually. So, and even if that did happen, there's going to be something that goes wrong. So we tend to, as infants, we're vulnerable, we're victims. And there's a lot of sadness there. Then we grow up a little bit, we could move into the next position on the unhappy merry-go-round, the unmerry merry-go-round. And then, suddenly you're very fearful because you just know things can go wrong. And you're that friend who's just worried all the time, anxious all the time. And if you get stuck in that, it's very toxic. And then, of course, then there's a perpetrator who's angry, and they don't see themselves as the villain. They just know the right way to do things. And they have to just smash their hand down, their fist down. And usually it's slamming someone in the head with a cell phone or something.
Yeah,
And
that's exactly what happened with this little, and exactly. Yeah. You
yeah.
just outlined what happened, it's perfect. And
we all deserve better. We all deserve to
right.
be above that, not blaming the perpetrators. It's so easy to get caught up in this who's right, who's wrong drama, but it's pointless. And so when you ask how good can it get, you're out of it. You start freeing yourself. It's the beginning of freedom for all of us.
I use how good can it get when I wake up in the morning always. And again, I teach it to my patients as well.
Good.
I had another patient who was, how old was he? I think he was 18. And he was a pretty big guy. He was very large, very tall. And he was a gamer. So I had to explain everything to him in video game terminology, which was great. And we had this amazing connection. And I don't even know that much I know somewhat about video games, some stuff.
I know there's leveling up, and that's appropriate.
Yeah, leveling up. That's what. Yes. And have you watched the movie Free Guy? Free Guy is great.
I'd love to see that. I saw that it came out, and I haven't had a chance yet to see it. It looks so wonderful.
Oh, it's so good because it teaches you this. And this guy in the movie Free Guy, he has to level up. He learns how to play the game, but he doesn't want to kill people. So he has to figure out how to level up without killing people, which is great. And that's what I was teaching this kid, because he was going to the gym. He didn't like going to the gym because people would stare at him. So I go, well, you just have to level up. And why don't you just, start talking to the person who's staring at you? Just say, hey, what's up? Or how are you? Or, something. Either that person's going to start a conversation, or they may give you a tip, or they might not even talk to you, and they might just go away. Like they're an NPC character, they just kind of go away, or maybe you're bringing them to life,
Right.
which was very interesting. And you never know what can happen. And so he started to see, he's like, oh, okay. I go, you have to treat life like a video game in a way. I mean, we are living in a simulated reality where, if you believe that, or like you write, a holographic universe.
Well, this goes back to the philosopher Leibniz, who was one of the two gentlemen that invented calculus. They got the same idea at the same time. And this is Gottfried Wilhelm Leibniz. The other one is Isaac Newton. So
Yes.
we know Newton, but we use the notation from Leibniz. Leibniz was noticing that to be that observer, he would love this whole quantum age, this quantum paradigm, because he really wrote all about it. That when you get to that level of observation, that leveling up, where you can look down at yourself as the observer, or as Shakespeare said, all the world is a stage, and
Yes.
acting on it. Yeah, that's the key. And so that from when you write things, when you produce production, sets and stories, and bring them to life, that you can play with the characterization of everything. And that is fundamentally the key, to recognize that there is a level of you, the real you, who's observing the whole thing. And it's like, ta-da, then you're free. It's like you're free from the trap of being stuck in fight or flight with the autonomic nervous system stressed out,
Boom. Oh my gosh. Yes. I started to realize that in 2009. I was doing triathlons, like sprint triathlons, and I was swimming in the ocean, and all of a sudden I got stuck in the ocean. Like I couldn't move forward, I couldn't move back. And I've been a swimmer my whole entire life. I've swam competitively in high school. And it was just so weird. I was stuck in my head. I was like, I know I can move forward, but my body's not going there. So I was stuck in fight or flight. And that's when I found I went to Los Feliz here in Los Angeles, because I used to work at Children's Hospital at the time. And I see this sign in front of this store, and it said, "Are you stuck?" I'm in for a hypnosis, and it was a sports hypnotherapy.
Right. Love it.
Type practitioner, and it was great, and she worked me through it, and I was in that fight or flight, which a lot of people are, and they don't even realize that.
Well, the main thing, if you're caught in a current or whatever happened to you in the ocean, it's good if you can just recognize what's happening. When you get to that observational awareness, like, I'm stuck, then you can remember, like, oh, that's right, relax, go sideways,
Yeah, go on your back
right.
When you swim. Yeah.
There are lots of different things to get you out of it. And sometimes when we're in that fight or flight, we forget to do that. But if you just do that little level up, observe it, how good can it get? That's a good question, because it'll take you up a level. And then instantly you can see, usually, suddenly the inspiration comes through.
Very, very true. Yes. Yes. That's excellent. I'm just like looking at my next question. Like, pause. Anyway, okay. Oh yeah, and we already talked about like just existing in other people's reality. But so let's go ahead and talk about serendipities and synchronicities. I mean, because that's how my whole journey got started with all of this. And basically what I can remember one day is when I started to piece it together. I've had, again, like I said, serendipity, synchronicities my whole entire life, but I never really started to connect them, kind of like a Lego set or a puzzle set, to make it have meaning in my life. Right. So I found this softball right here one day when I was on a walk, and I kept it in my kitchen. And something told me to watch this movie. It was called Eighth Grade, and I really wanted to see it. And it's about this little girl who is in eighth grade, and she's opening up a time capsule in a shoebox from when she was in sixth grade. And she opens up the shoebox, and there's many different things in there. And there's a ball that looks exactly like this. And there was writing on that softball. Okay, so it's kind of a distinct softball that I have. It's fluorescent yellow, right?
Yes.
And so I go and I look, I go, that's really interesting. I go, but her ball has writing on it. My ball doesn't have writing on it. So I started to look at my ball, and my ball does have writing on it, and it says Banditas on it, right? And so I then think, and I was like, what does that mean to me, Banditas? I was like, oh, my favorite movie when I was a kid was Time Bandits.
Oh my gosh.
Right. And so in Time Bandits, what's happening in the movie? There's this little boy, and his parents are not paying attention to him. They're so concerned with their electronics, right? And this movie again was so far
that's ahead of its time.
Future. It's so far Yeah, it's so ahead of its time because that's what's happening right now. No one's paying attention, you
Yeah.
know? And he just goes on this journey. I mean, he sees these little people come through his wall and they're like, "Hey," he's like, "Where are you?" They're like, "Come with us." And he's like, "Where are you going?" And they're like, "Oh, we're going to go through time because God created the universe or the world in 7 days and there's a lot of imperfections. So we're going to go fix all these imperfections, you know? But you can quantum jump and go back into your life and fix those imperfections, right?
Yeah. Well, what happens is like if you're the example earlier of this is a broken bone and it's healed, it's like you're on a different timeline. So it's like you made a jump, like you shifted and you made an adjustment to history, your history of what happened to you, whether that was like I've done that with burns on my body and my friend did it with that broken bone. I haven't yet broken a bone, but that's what's happening anytime we do that. We're shifting out of one reality and suddenly the entire history has been rewritten. Because if you go to look for evidence of what happened, like my friend did, she couldn't find the x-ray that ever showed what she had seen, what the doctor had seen originally. You have a broken leg. She knew she had a broken leg. She couldn't walk on it. It hurt. So the evidence is gone with that previous version of reality every time. And so that's what's interesting. It's like a rewrite has occurred, but these rewrites are occurring a lot, a lot more often than we realize.
Right. Like mirror, mirror on the wall.
Right. Yeah,
We
that's
used to say that when we were kids all the time. Mirror, mirror on the wall. We used to play
who's
Snow
the
White.
fairest of them all, right?
Right. And
Yeah.
now what is it? Mirror, mirror, or
It's
magic.
magic mirror on the wall. It even sounds wrong. We're stumbling around like, how do you say it?
So what is going on with that, Cynthia? I mean, can you explain a little bit about what the Mandela effect is for people who may not understand or are seeing these things, but they're thinking something is actually wrong with them
Yeah.
and not the outside world?
It's called the Mandela effect because people famously started noticing that Nelson Mandela was alive. Art Bell mentioned it on his Coast to Coast radio show. It got picked up. A lot of people heard that. And then at a conference, Dragon Con, Fiona Broom and some people, they may have heard Art Bell. I don't know. But then they're suddenly saying, whoa, isn't that amazing? Nelson Mandela's alive. Do you remember he died too? Like, yeah, I do. So it became the Mandela effect, named after Nelson Mandela. However, I'd written about this previously in my book Reality Shifts, talking about a different actor, Larry Hagman, and it might as
Right.
well have been called the Hagman effect. I'm fine with it being the Mandela effect, but it took like 10 years later and it caught on. So, but finally we're noticing it. It is a real phenomenon. It's not just people being alive again, but it's usually something that's on the periphery of our attentional awareness spectrum. So it's not usually your best friend or your child or your parent or your spouse that died and comes back to life. That's not like a big thing because those people were so emotionally entangled with that we're seeing them a lot more often. I do get a lot of emails and people asking how to change those kind of situations. Like there was medical accident occurred. I want my mother back, that
Oh,
kind of thing.
wow.
I get tons of email about that. And then they want to know, is it possible? Yes, it's possible. But, but basically you'd want to be like a yogi master to be able to accomplish such a thing because you need to be in that detached, entangled state of mind, like a daydream, blissed out state where you're just cool with everything. Like the friends that you were like, what's he doing? Does he know what he's doing?
Yeah.
You have to be
Yeah.
that kind of like shifting between realities so effortlessly.
He does. Yes.
And
Yes.
then no problem, pretty much anything can come back. But most people, we quantum zeno affect things in. We check, 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 check. Like if you've got OCD, check, 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 check. That's quantum zeno effect. You can lock a quantum system in place that way. And that's what we're doing when we're familiar with our loved ones. And that's why people in South Africa don't want to call it the Mandela effect. They say, no, no, no. We always had Nelson Mandela. Of course they did. They've quantum zeno affected it in. Check, 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 check. So you can lock a system in place that way. But in order to get the good effects, you don't want to be locking things in place. You want to be like your friend who did the opposite. He's detached, he's entangled. What is that? Detached means that you're above it all, that you can be neutral and kind of balanced. And then entangled means you actually do care. He's not a mean person, probably.
No, he's not. It's interesting. just like you write in your conscious book, it's who you tell the story to will
Yes.
perceive it in a different way.
Yes.
So I had to learn that, because I remember I was telling a story, but then I started noticing how people would interpret it. And I had to be very careful. They were just interpreting it based on their own personal experiences.
Right.
Like if I told someone who hated men about this, oh, he's such an asshole. Oh, he did this and I go, no, no, no,
That's not
that's
where we're
not,
going here.
that's no. And it was just like, that's not who he is.
No.
I'm
No.
trying to figure this out,
Yes.
and I'm trying to look at it with in an objective way, as we should with everything, just an open mindset about what is actually going on here. And you're interesting. You did say he cared. Yes, we were quantumly entangled
Yes.
as well.
That's the entanglement. That's love. That's like a heart to heart energy cords. It's like, yeah, I can
Yeah.
feel it. Like
Yeah.
those
Yeah.
bonds of love. Yeah.
Yeah. And we were, because I would feel whenever he was having a bad day, it was weird. I would get these weird pangs, kind of like the Harry
Yep.
Potter, like
Yeah.
when Harry Potter or like Voldemort killed someone, Harry Potter would get this like twinge in his forehead. That's what was happening to me. Like, and I started to look at it, because I was like, okay, is this my perimenopause or what else is going on? It only would happen at certain times of the day.
Ah.
And I started to really look at it and jot it down. And so then, and it was only thoughts of him, and they were very negative thoughts. So
Okay.
I started to call him on it, and I started to text him. I was like, hey, even when we weren't dating, I was like, what's going on with you at this time? And
Right.
so he would tell me. He was like, oh, I had a fight with my partner at work, or, I'm just so frustrated. I'm so angry. And so I go, you need to like, because I am a pretty happy-go-lucky,
Yeah.
very, and I would be like, I got a massage. I remember one day I got a massage and I was shopping at Bed Bath and Beyond, and boom, I just
Yeah.
started crying and I was just like, it felt like a tornado hit me, and it was really intense. And so I had to really talk to him, and and then his mother died and it got even worse. And then I go, maybe I just got to wait it out, and I talked to several people on just getting it off. And it was really hard. I mean, thank God it's like non-existent now. But it was pretty intense there for quite a while, so you're saying that is a true love chord.
Well, I'm saying that we're connected with love cords. Like I had a pet dog who's passed away now, but anytime I went to the grocery store and come back home, he wouldn't bark when I came home from the grocery store, unless and only when there had been butcher's bones for dogs that I had picked up. Only then, unless and until only then. It's like he was psychically with me in the grocery store.
I love it.
Yeah, he's home alone. The dog's looking after the house, but then I come back, and then he's just like would go bananas, like woof 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 woof. Like he knew, you've got bones. The butcher had them today for you. And I'm like, yeah, I do. Okay, hold on a minute. I'm still putting groceries away. I can't believe you know it every single time. Oh yeah, he knew.
Oh my gosh, that's so awesome. I love it. I love it. So, another thing I want to talk about is consciousness as well, because this is another very interesting phenomenon that was happening to me. And maybe other people listening to this can relate, because I was reading it in your consciousness book, and then it was like, oh, okay, that's what's happening. So certain times when I would date someone or meet someone, I would go, and it was a particular person, maybe it was our energies were lining up. I would go
Yes.
into this trance, and it kind of like an altered state of reality with this person. Okay. Now these guys were, how can I explain them? I mean, maybe I was vibrating higher and they were vibrating at my level, except they were doing nefarious things, or maybe they couldn't get as self-realized as I was, because they were wanting to, like a lot of them were wanting to do what I was doing, either they had studied writing but never could get there because of their beliefs, and never could execute whatever they were doing or whatever creative project they were doing, but I was executing it.
Yes.
And it was just weird, because I would know, it's just a very weird feeling. where you're conscious, but you're not. And you're like, you're telling yourself this person's bad for me, but yet I need to go through something. And then all of a sudden, once you learn the lesson, or once you shift your consciousness, it feels like a cord has been cut. It's like you get tethered and you get woken up. And I've talked to a couple of men who have been put under these types of hypnotic type trances themselves, which one of them I call the siren curse. The other one I call the fury curse, going over the Greek myths of those deities, right? So what is actually happening in those instances?
Well, it's a really unique person by person thing, so it's hard to generalize. But if I were to generalize, and if that was my experience, then I'd be immediately looking at levels of self. So if you know, like, if you're familiar with chakras, you got your crown chakra, 7, 6 is the Anya, third eye. 5 is your throat, 4 is your heart, blah, blah, blah. So if you equate those to levels of consciousness itself, then you can start noticing when you feel like you're in a trance, or you're feeling like not quite fully there, what you're doing is engaging at some of these lower levels. You might feel there's a lot of interaction. I've got a book, Aura Advantage, talking about these chakras and these energy levels, because it's all about consciousness, right? And the way that we relate to others often gets tangled up in these kinds of energy sucks, where someone feels like they're grabbing energy, but it's not a victim situation. Just like we said earlier, we don't have to look at them like, oh, they're the bad guy. Not necessarily. Usually there's a dynamic that's underway that you're actually getting an opportunity to learn from this dynamic.
Yes.
And so if you look at the levels of self again, that your observer level, how good can it get? Go up, 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 level up, level up, level up. Then you start recognizing, oh, I needed to go through that so I could finally clear this longstanding pattern that I've been stuck in, that I don't need to do anymore. And you don't need to blame any person or any situation.
Right. And that's what I see from my own personal experiences, even though they've been quite painful emotionally. I will have to say. But I have learned a lot. It's forced me to read, get more self-realized, go into what I am supposed to really be doing, which and it's brought many of my creative projects full circle, where I was doing a lot of intuitive writing, a lot of just guided writing, channeled writing, I guess you would say. And I didn't understand what I was writing. I was like, I don't know what this is. I was like, where am I going with this? I don't know where I'm going, and sometimes what I would be writing would manifest in my real world. And I would just kind of shelf it because it would freak me out.
That could really freak people out. I've had some freak out situations, but they tend to be good ones for me. Like, I was feeling lonely on my birthday. My kids were middle school age, and they were at that age where don't walk to school with us. And so I'd walk behind them, and it's my birthday, and then it starts like gently raining or something. And I'm feeling like, oh my gosh. So I'm in that kind of mood. And then, like a Hallmark card come to life, there's this grandmother on a park bench with her granddaughter, and the grandmother opens a box, and it's a birthday cake. And then she lights the candles.
I love it.
And that's as I'm walking by. And I just felt like, did I just get the perfect birthday card from the angels and God, or what? Like, okay, I have no problems.
I love that. Stuff like that happens to me on a daily basis. I mean, it was my birthday on the 5th. And and I was saying to myself, well, I guess I didn't get that many birthday cards this year. I didn't get that many calls this year. And all of a sudden I turn around and I grab this card that's just right here, and I open it up because it says ouch on it. And I go, I never, I don't remember getting sick and someone sending me a card. This is really bizarre. So I open up this card and I read it, and it's a birthday card, but it doesn't have a date on it. And it's the funniest birthday card ever, because it says, you're my favorite. Don't tell the others.
That's exactly it, right?
Right.
Oh, happy birthday. Happy birthday.
Right. So stuff like that happens to me all the time. Like this is another interesting one. I wrote a blog about heroes the other day. And I just was kind of writing it, and it was off that song, I Need a Hero. I forgot the woman's name, but it was very popular, like late 80s.
I remember that. Yeah.
Right. And all of a sudden I go to clinic the next day, and I get my last patient. And my medical assistant gives me the patient. And I was like, can you read me this name? And she's like, Hero.
Oh, that's so cool. This is serendipity. This is synchronicity. This is our high selves playing with us and saying, like you want to see something that's going to blow your socks off. You want to celebrate your birthday. Here you go. And when you bring that much energy to your day and you're asking how good can it get every day, you can totally get these things every day, and they are amazing.
They are amazing, but you can also do weird ones, because here's a weird one I was doing the other day, because I've been vibing really high. I spent a month in the desert and I would meditate every day in front of this mountain. So I came back super high vibe to LA. And I was like, I wonder what it would be like if I had kids. I think that the thing that I would hate the most if I would have children would be taking them to school every day. Okay. I go to work. This was this week, and the security guard makes me park in this weird area, and it's right across the street from a school. And she's like, "Oh, don't worry, just park there. I'll watch your car." I was like, "Okay, I've never had to park here before. This is really bizarre, right?" and I've worked at this clinic before. And I go, okay, so I go and I do my work. I come out at around 4:30. Someone is double parked in front of me. And it's a parent, and she's picking up her kid from school. And I was like, oh,
oh my gosh.
I wouldn't move. I was like, excuse me, can you move your car? And she would not move until her kid came out of school. I was like, this is what I'm talking about.
Yeah, and I write about this in reality shifts too. It's like whatever you think about, sometimes it happens. It's like, and even when you didn't mean for it to happen, but then it catches your attention later, and you recognize, okay, did I just do that? And I guess the short answer is yes, because you're bringing your attention to it. It's like that quantum Zeno effect thing, where you're checking something, looking for something, observing it, and even like it's like our consciousness doesn't know the difference in time. So if you're focusing on it like a possible future thing, and then it just brings it to you, like, here you go,
Right. And yeah, it happens to me on a daily basis. And sometimes I go through periods where it's kind of dry, nothing's happening. And I'm like, oh, I want to see magic, or nutmeg is a great psychedelic. I mean, for me, nutmeg does it. I eat these gluten-free pumpkin muffins in the desert that they sell at my favorite coffee shop. And all of a sudden it's like, whoa,
You're so funny.
I'm like, I don't need to take psychedelics. My friend the other day was like, do you want to do some mushrooms? I'm like, no. I go, I can see stuff without mushrooms.
On nutmeg. Yeah.
Nutmeg is enough for me. I mean, one of the things before we end here and wrap it up is what I've noticed is when I was starting to do this quantum timeline jumping thing, I was noticing the subtle differences, because you have to be very conscious when you do it, correct?
Yes.
And you have to bring a lot of energy. So my friend and I started doing it when we watched the movie, The OA. Have you seen The OA?
No, but I've heard about that one.
Oh my gosh, you need to.
Amazing.
Yeah. Oh, it's amazing. I'm rewatching. I rewatched a couple of episodes, and then they made sense the second time around. Now that I've studied all of the reality shifts and everything, it totally makes sense on what's going on and how she's doing it, because it also talks about near-death experiences as well. So when I started doing it, I was dating this one guy, and we had gotten intimate. And the first couple of times that I had slept with him, he was wearing these bikini brief underwears. And then the third time he was wearing boxers. And I said to him, I go, oh, you're wearing boxers today. He's like, I always wear boxers. His mood was also different that day. And I was just like, what? This is bizarre. And so, and then I was writing some blogs for a client who I kind of was having to handhold, and then she just started changing everything. She's like, okay, my medical director needs to read these. And I was like, wait a minute, that's not in our contract. So it was bizarre. And so I asked one of my friends who I was practicing this with, and she's a metaphysician. I was like, oh my gosh, all this stuff, weird stuff started happening. And she goes, when did you start quantum jumping?
Yeah.
She's like, you've leveled up, and they're like, here, and I just started laughing so hard. It was the funniest thing. And I was like, oh, I get it. But sometimes you can be in a reality and things look really gray, like your consciousness or you're vibrating at a different level. and things look gray. Like I was working at this migrant shelter, and it just wasn't, I was like, it sounded cool. I had jumped into it. The money was good, but then I was like, oh, I don't want to be here. This isn't for me. And no sooner did I say this isn't for me, I just boom, jumped it out. Like immediately I got fired.
Perfect.
It was hilarious. But even the Starbucks, like I went in the Starbucks feels weird. It felt robotic, like gray, robotic, just very stale, very bizarre. So can you explain what's going on? It's just a different.
Yeah, well, there are different energies in different places. I like to raise the energy. If I'm going to be standing in line at the post office, for example, then I'll just vibe it up. Like I need to do that because I don't want to be in a place when it feels like that low energy. Things can go wrong if you're in a place when it's low energy. That can be the moment that a truck crashes into the building, like those kind of bad things happen. Like when energy is noticed to be lacking. There was a famous incident that Edgar Casey was told by a woman who said that she didn't get in an elevator one time. She was at a shop, she was shopping, and she saw the elevator doors open, and the people inside had no auras. They were just like gray. Yes. And she's like, eh. And she said, even though she was waiting, she pushed the button, she was waiting for the elevator, she did not get in. And then the door closed, and then the elevator just like, it crashed. So, and a lot of people get these kind of indicators, but I think we're doing that all the time. So your choice is, if you can't raise the energy of the place, that's what I like to do. Like, hey, I'm here. And I've had talks with Source, the creator, about it. Like, okay, I'm messing with people's karma. And the response I got back was, you're there, aren't you? And then I'm like, oh, okay, cool. So, because I know I'm changing people's,
you're shifting the reality.
I'm totally changing everything, but it's okay. If it's good and you're vibing it up, then no harm, no foul. And it may prevent problems from occurring that wouldn't, because you're raising the energy of a place. That's one option. If for people who are listening to this and they feel like, my gosh, I need energy, I don't have energy to spare, then start meditating more, do some qigong, do something that gives you the energy so you've got a little extra, because that's what you need to start playing with all this. Otherwise, it's fine to just leave. Don't go in if it feels weird, Be happy when you get fired, if you get fired, all that stuff. Good.
So true. I'm always raising the energy. I mean, everywhere I work has to be a party, I ended up working my birthday. Everybody's like, you're working on your birthday? It was a party. I took 2 dozen donuts. I took coffee. I worked with a lot of people. We just had an amazing time. It was fun. We were joking, we were laughing, we were telling stories all day long.
I love it.
Patience. It was great. The vibe was very, very high.
That's what I would love. That's what I would love, that for Earth, that everything's a musical, that's all just like festivity and celebration everywhere. That's what I would love.
Yeah, I think we need to, now with all the gas prices going up, we need to like visualize and go, gas prices down. Looking like, I want to pay this much for gas, right?
Right.
Everybody put their consciousness on that, but that's true. Because even during COVID, COVID was a tough time for a lot of people, but I would walk around and I would, I never got bothered. Very rarely did I get bothered. Like I got attacked one time, but then I knew I was the one to shift that consciousness, and I did things and positive things came out of it. Like I got them to remove this big sign that they had on this street, this electrical sign, which was causing people to fight with each other and to scream at each other for a mask while they were walking on a bike path that was in open air. So it was very bizarre. And they ended up, I wrote the police chief a letter, and then that sign came down after I wrote that letter. Yay. So it was great. And it changed that consciousness. Like nobody's fighting anymore.
That's so important.
It's like people think that they have no power. You have a lot of power. You're living here in this space. You gotta, change it, shift it, have fun with it.
Yeah, and together we can help each other rise out of all this collective drama. But we can do
Yes.
it through telling stories. Drama can be part of the solution too.
Yeah, telling stories, having fun, having a party,
Yes.
laughing and just raising the vibration that way, in a very fun way. So this has been an awesome conversation. Any closing points that you would like to leave us with? Of course, on the how good can it get?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, that's, I think, the best thing. And I didn't talk too much about the International Mandela Effect Conference,
Oh
but
yes, go ahead. Go ahead.
it's,
Yes, just
yeah, we're
tell us where
doing,
you're going to be and
yeah. Well, we're
how
not
people can
doing
get a
physical
hold of you.
things. Yeah, we're still doing the live stream events on YouTube. So it's International Mandela Effect Conference. I know that's long, but you can just go to imec.world and subscribe to our newsletter, and you'll get announcements about when we're doing things to basically level up for humanity. That's what we're working on, is recognizing that there's a collective shift underway, and the Mandela effect is part of our collective awakening. So we look at things like animals that are coming back and so forth. It's fun, and sometimes have scientists on the show. And you can find me through my website, realityshifters.com. I also publish a monthly newsletter, Reality Shifters, and I include firsthand reports of people noticing these amazing experiences, as well as any news that's happened in the past month. So that's been published monthly since the 1990s, and every issue is on my website, which is realityshifters.com.
Excellent. And I'm going to have links on our show notes to your website and where people can find you and get a hold of you. So, because you also do consultations too, which I think is
Yes.
amazing.
Yeah, I do coaching with people, and a lot of the people I work with are coaches themselves. That seems like that's the majority of my client base right now. But I think that's because the light workers want to know, like, how do we do this quantum jumping? How can we see the subtleties? How can I teach that to my um, clients and so forth? And a lot of them are doctors, nurses, and so forth. So
Excellent.
it's the healers, it's the way showers. The light
Yeah.
workers are here. We're
It's
waking.
go time.
Yeah, it's go time.
Go time. Thank you so much for being on Nurses and Hypochondriacs. It's
My
been super
pleasure.
fun.
Yeah. Yay.
Awesome.